Imagine if Elvis Presley, the king of rock, were alive today. How would he react to the tumultuous political landscape defining the modern era? What would he think of Donald Trump, the businessman who became president? According to one of his relatives, Elvis would have thought Trump crazy. But what does this statement reveal about Elvis, his worldview, and the legacy he left behind? Get ready for a fascinating journey through the life of Elvis Presley, his relationship with politics, and the impact of his personal opinions on pop culture. Elvis Presley, the king of rock, was born on January 8, 1935, in Tupelo, Mississippi. He grew up in a humble family, facing financial struggles, but always surrounded by music, which would soon become his greatest passion and, eventually, his legacy. In the 1950s, Elvis became a global icon, breaking cultural and racial barriers with his innovative style, blending gospel, blues, and country in a way never seen before. His stage presence, charisma, and music forever transformed the music industry. However, as his career soared, Elvis's stance on politics was always ambiguous. In an era of great social upheaval, including the civil rights movement in the United States and the Vietnam War, Elvis rarely took public stances on political issues. He was, in fact, a figure who seemed to prefer keeping a certain distance from politics. His energy was focused on music, performance, and building a cultural empire. Although his lyrics and the way he expressed himself in his songs had a powerful emotional and social charge, Elvis never used his star status to make public political statements. Unlike many artists of his time who became involved in protests and social movements, Elvis seemed to prefer remaining outside the political arena. One of the few interactions Elvis had with politics was in 1970 when he met then-President Richard Nixon. The meeting, although widely discussed, was not about explicit political support. Elvis, a fan of law enforcement and authority, actually wanted a distinction from the U.S. government, asking Nixon to appoint him as a drug-fighting agent. It was a peculiar approach, a reflection of his worldview, but there was no indication that Elvis had a clear political ideology. Moreover, Elvis never sought to support a party or align with any prominent political figure, neither in his music nor in his interviews. While he witnessed the growth of political tensions, such as the Vietnam War protests and the fight for civil rights, his attitude was always more focused on unity through his art rather than through specific political ideologies. Interestingly, despite his famous apolitical stance, Elvis was deeply affected by the social issues of his time. His involvement with racial issues, though often limited to his own experience as an artist, reflected his style and influence. He had a deep respect for African American music and used his status to give visibility to Black artists in an era when institutionalized racism was present in every aspect of American society. But even with all these cultural influences, politics was never a field where Elvis wanted to stand out. His music and image were always more geared toward entertainment and messages of hope, love, and resistance that he conveyed to his fans. Elvis himself, in several interviews, stated that his mission was to make people feel good, to make them forget their problems, at least for a few hours. This apolitical stance doesn't mean that Elvis was uninterested in the world around him, but rather that he believed his impact as an artist could be more meaningful than his participation in political debates. In a world filled with divisions and tensions, Elvis seemed to believe that music had the power to unite people regardless of their social class, race, or political ideology. Therefore, his legacy is not tied to any political movement or party. Elvis's influence on the world comes from his music, his style, and his ability to transcend cultural boundaries. He became a symbol of cultural resistance, individual freedom, and authenticity. But he never allowed himself to be trapped by politics. This was part of who he was, someone who, with his voice and presence, changed the music world without getting caught in the traps of politics. Jerry Presley, Elvis Presley's cousin, has always been involved in the world of tributes and honors to the King of Rock. Although he is not Elvis's brother, Jerry is frequently called upon to represent the iconic singer at shows, events, and performances that aim to revive the energy of Elvis for new generations. Through his family ties and his role as one of the figures who continues to celebrate Elvis's legacy, Jerry also became a well-known voice when it comes to discussing the life and values of the famous singer. However, Jerry became involved in a recent controversy when he made a statement that caught the attention of many. In an interview, he stated that if Elvis were alive today, he would think Donald Trump was crazy. This statement quickly gained prominence, sparking discussions about what Elvis would think of such a controversial and polarizing figure like Trump. However, it's important to understand that this statement does not come from an official source from the Presley family, but rather from Jerry's personal perspective, someone who, although related to Elvis, did not share a direct brotherly relationship with him. Jerry Presley, like many other members of the Presley family, is often seen as an authority figure when it comes to sharing memories and stories about Elvis. He has a career based on performing as Elvis, presenting himself as a kind of living tribute to the singer. But this authority over Elvis's figure can also be questioned. After all, as a family member but not a direct brother of Elvis, Jerry cannot, in fact, accurately claim what the King of Rock would think about contemporary events or figures. Jerry has a very expressive view of Elvis's life and frequently shares his opinions. However, it's important to keep in mind that his statements may be more based on a personal reading of how he thinks Elvis would react to current situations than any direct or historical comment from Elvis on these matters. By saying that Elvis would think Trump was crazy, Jerry is actually projecting his own beliefs about Trump's politics, rather than revealing something Elvis would have said or demonstrated in his lifetime. But why did this statement cause so much buzz? Donald Trump, as a former U.S. president, was one of the most divisive political figures of the 21st century. His rise to the presidency, followed by his controversial leadership style and polarizing rhetoric, made him both strongly supported and heavily criticized. In this scenario, many public figures, both past and present, have been associated with or questioned about their opinions on Trump. The idea that Elvis Presley, the King of Rock, a figure that symbolized freedom, rebellion, and a voice for the oppressed, would have such a strong position on a polarizing figure like Trump, quickly captured the public's imagination. However, when we look closer, we realize that Jerry Presley's statement lacks concrete substance. Elvis Presley never directly got involved in political matters, and his stance was always to keep a distance from the political stage. He never publicly showed support for any politician or party, and as we saw earlier, his meeting with President Nixon was more a reflection of his desire to have a relationship with figures of authority than real political engagement. Furthermore, the very nature of Jerry Presley's statement leaves many gaps. By stating that Elvis would think Trump was crazy, Jerry is assuming an emotional reaction from Elvis to Trump without truly being able to prove this. How could Elvis, who lived in a completely different era, react to the events and politics of today with so many divisions and tensions? As someone who was always described as apolitical, it's hard to assert with certainty how Elvis would have dealt with modern politics. For this reason, Jerry's statement, while interesting and provocative, seems more like a personal view of someone trying to connect a historical figure to current events in a speculative way. Jerry Presley, with this statement, puts Elvis's figure in a new light, trying to imagine how he would fit into modern times. But by doing so, he also raises questions about the public perception of historical figures and how their legacies are projected into contexts they never experienced. The idea of associating Elvis, someone who represented rebellion and freedom in his time, with a political figure like Trump, who polarizes so many opinions, is an example of how a person's legacy can be reinterpreted and shaped to fit a modern narrative. This statement also reflects a broader phenomenon, the tendency to modernize or adapt historical figures to contemporary issues, even if those icons, like Elvis, chose to avoid the complexities of politics while they were alive. Jerry Presley's statement about what Elvis Presley would think of Donald Trump has reignited interest in the King of Rock's political legacy in an unexpected way. Even decades after his death, Elvis remains a relevant figure not just in music, but also in popular culture and, indirectly, in politics. Elvis's impact transcends the music world, shaping the perception of multiple generations, and it is exactly this transcendent influence that the controversy about his views on Trump brought to the forefront. Although Elvis was never a political activist and avoided public statements about his political stance, his image continues to be projected, interpreted, and even adapted to align with the values and issues of today's society. The idea that Elvis, a figure synonymous with freedom, rebellious youth, and resistance to the norm, could have such a strong opinion on a contemporary politician like Trump makes his figure constantly reinterpreted. This leads us to reflect on how the King of Rock still, unintentionally, occupies a space in modern politics. Since the beginning of his career, Elvis Presley was seen as a subversive figure. In the 1950s, his music challenged the social and racial conventions of the time, giving a voice to a generation longing for change. He was more than just a singer. He became a symbol of youth that wanted to break free from the rigid norms of the past. He didn't fit the standard of artists of his time. His blend of African-American musical influences with traditional country represented a rebellion against the cultural status quo, and his appearance and often provocative attitudes troubled the conservative American society. However, what's fascinating is that, despite never directly getting involved in political issues, Elvis was, unintentionally, an icon of resistance. He didn't protest with placards or speeches, but his music and image were a form of protest. This nature of rebellion continues to be associated with him today, with people using his image and music as a way to express their dissatisfaction with the system or the authorities. This spirit of rebellion still echoes in today's discussions, and the controversy involving Jerry Presley reflects how Elvis's image can still be manipulated to align with modern political debates. Elvis's figure became an emblem that can be reclaimed and repurposed as times demand, even without him ever publicly taking a political stance. What Jerry Presley's statement reveals, more than anything else, is the desire of people to connect historical and cultural figures with the present. In recent years, we've seen a growing search for symbols that represent resistance and change. When Jerry suggests that Elvis would have an opinion on Trump, he is trying to connect two polarizing figures in an attempt to understand how past cultural icons would fit into the political divisions of today. Trump, as a former U.S. president, represents a highly divisive political figure. His rise to power and leadership style, characterized by aggressive rhetoric, populist policies, and a departure from traditional American political norms, contrasts with Elvis's image, which, although a cultural rebel, was not directly involved in the political issues of the day. This discrepancy causes figures like Elvis to be reinterpreted, almost as cultural analogies that help us reflect on contemporary figures of authority. The connection between Elvis and Trump, even if speculative, speaks to the way we use past cultural icons to contextualize the present. Even decades after his death, Elvis remains a reference point for those searching for meaning or direction, especially in times of great political and social uncertainty. Over the years, Elvis's image has been sold in different ways. From the 1960s revival, with the popularity of films like Viva Las Vegas and Blue Hawaii, to his reinterpretation in the 2000s, where his style and music continue to be used in advertising campaigns and as a symbol of resistance, Elvis became more than just a singer. He became an icon of freedom and individuality, values that paradoxically do not easily fit into a polarized political field. It's interesting to note how, over the decades, Elvis's figure continued to be adapted to fit contemporary concerns and conflicts. In a polarized political scenario like that of the United States, where there's an incessant search for symbolism and identification, Elvis's image is often revisited. Not as he truly was, but as people would like him to have been. This is why Jerry Presley's statement about Trump fuels the idea that Elvis might, indeed, have something to say about current political issues, even though that possibility was never considered by him during his lifetime. The controversy about what Elvis would have thought of Donald Trump is just one example of how cultural icons are transformed to serve modern narratives. As much as Elvis was apolitical, he continues to be a reference that represents, for many, a form of resistance to the system. The need to associate him with contemporary political issues reveals a trend of reinterpreting historical figures to provide answers to current tensions. This phenomenon is not unique to Elvis, but it is a common characteristic when it comes to figures of great cultural impact. The polarization of public figures and the constant struggle for cultural authority makes us constantly searching past figures for answers to the issues we face today. Elvis's image, symbolizing freedom, individuality, and rebellion, continues to be appropriated to generate responses that we may never have known he would have given. So, what do you think about this controversy involving Elvis Presley and Donald Trump? Do you agree with Jerry Presley's view, or do you believe Elvis would have had a different opinion on today's politics? Leave your comment below and share your thoughts with us. If you like this video and want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you don't miss any video, and leave that like to help us grow. And of course, share this video with your friends so more people can join the conversation and also reflect on how cultural icons still shape our perceptions today. See you in the next video. This moment, seemingly simple, marked their relationship in a way that no contract or legal agreement could. The song, with its words of farewell and affection, showed Priscilla that despite everything, the love Elvis felt for her would always endure. So everyone, we've come to the end of this emotional journey through the story of Elvis Presley, Priscilla, and the song I Will Always Love You. The song that transcended time, love, and loss, and that continues to touch hearts to this day. If you were touched by this story and want to know more about the backstage of great music icons and their emotional stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Activate notifications so you won't miss any videos and always stay up to date with the new things we bring to you. If this video made you reflect or sparked some emotion, like and share with your friends. Let's spread this story of love, respect, and legacy. See you in the next video, where we will continue exploring the most fascinating things in the world of music and pop culture. See you soon!